Right, welcome everyone to our very exciting Avila University webinar regarding visa and compliance session. Welcome, welcome. I see people slowly joining the webinar. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending where you are in the world. We're very, very happy to see you. Today, we're going to speak about one of the very important topics and a very interesting one, which is visa and compliance. We're going to speak about a visa journey. What is OPT and CPT? What are the most common misconceptions in the market currently about the F1 visa process? And we're also going to discuss of what to do and not to do in your visa interview. And if you're a student or an agent, how to prepare for the F1 visa interview and what mistakes not to do. And today I am very excited as Dr. Alan Martin from Avila University, who is International Recruitment and Retention Coordinator, is joining me today on this session. Hi, Dr. Martin, how are you?
Hi, Sally. I'm great. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you very much. Very excited for the webinar. And with that, I can see that a lot of people have already joined, and perhaps we should start with the topic of how to apply for an F1 visa, something that looks very complicated for many people, but hopefully with this webinar, we're gonna get there. Dr. Martin, I'll pass it to you.
Thank you. I really appreciate everybody joining this webinar. Hopefully it's very helpful. The prospect of applying for a visa is an exciting one, but it can also be a daunting one for many people because there's a lot of paperwork involved, a lot of processes, and a lot of steps. The good thing is, uh, the steps all work one at a time. So we take things one step at a time, and the visual on your screen right now is a great step-by-step process for how you'll apply for your student visa. So the first step in everything is, of course, you want to apply to the institution that you wish to study at and complete their admissions procedures and become an admitted student. Once you become an admitted student, that university will issue you a Form I-20. This is a government form which essentially works as a formal agreement of admission, not only between you and the university, but also with the United States government, because they will be issuing your visa and it's the form that you will use to start the visa application process. So once you receive that form, you can begin the steps and following to step two. One thing to start with is to pay what is called the SEVIS fee. It is a fee of $350. It's required before applying for a visa. It is a fee that's paid to the United States government, not to the institutions. So, for example, Avila doesn't receive any of that money, but what it does is supports the international student database that the government has for processing visas and monitoring students at different institutions. I'll describe what SEVIS does a bit more in some detail in a few slides, but once you've paid that fee, the next step is to complete the actual application form itself. It's called DS-160. All these government forms have codes. As you can see, I-20, DS-160. The DS-160 is the actual application form for the visa itself, for non-immigrant visas. There is a fee for the application separate from the SEVIS fee as well. It's $185 at the moment, and it's basically to create your machine-readable visa and to allow you to schedule the interview. So once the application form is submitted and the fee is paid, then it comes to scheduling the interview. That's probably the next significant step in the process. The interview that you will have will be at a U.S. embassy or consulate in your region. It's generally the best recommendation is to have that in your home country, if possible. Those who travel outside of their home country to another embassy or consulate abroad, questions are often asked about why that's the case. So you would typically do that, scheduling the appointment at the nearest US embassy or consulate to you. And so when you go to your interview, you'll attend in person at the embassy or consulate, and you'll bring with you all of the required documents and be prepared to answer questions in a conversation interview with the visa officer at the consulate or embassy. I'll talk about the documents in more detail just in a second. After that appointment, you'll typically know, in most cases, right at the end of your appointment what the outcome of your interview was, if you've been approved or denied. Sometimes you hear a little bit later in the process, and that's okay. So if you don't hear right away on that same day, don't panic. It's just sometimes the different embassies and consulates around the world have different processes and timelines. And you receive your visa decision. Usually shortly after that, you'll receive the actual visa itself that's included inside your passport. So the embassy or consulate typically keeps your passport at the end of your appointment so that they can put that stamp in there. Um, the time to receive your passport back with the visa can vary. In my experience, it can be 1 to 2 weeks. And so it can be different in different parts of the world, but that was in the United Kingdom. Once you receive your visa, then the really exciting part comes where you can start to plan your travel and your arrival to the US for to be in time to start your program at the college or university that you're attending. And the F1 visa allows you to enter the US up to 30 days before the program starts. So the Form I-20 on it has a program start date for the institution that issued it. And so up to 30 days before that is when you're allowed to enter the US. So you're allowed to come in and travel a little bit, see the sights, have some time to settle down and settle in before you actually start your classes. And so you can make those arrangements at that time. So looking at the documents, in order to receive the I-20, so for our purposes, for us to issue that, first, of course, you must be an admitted student. And then we must receive a couple of other documents from you, which includes your passport, any previous and also your current passport, and also financial documents that demonstrate that you can cover the financial costs of attendance for one academic year. Typically, that's presented in the form of bank statements or a letter of formal support, paycheck stubs. There are different ways of proving that. But the financial documents are needed before we can issue the Form I-20 in the first place. When you go to the visa interview appointment, you'll take all of those things again with the I-20 that you have been issued that should be signed and dated by you beforehand. I-20s are issued electronically these days. When I was applying for an F1 visa, they were all sent physically in the mail. So there was a waiting period, but you should receive yours electronically to then print and sign and date to bring with you to your visa interview appointment. You'll also want to bring the receipts of the SEVIS payment and your DS-160 submission confirmation, as well as any letter of acceptance or letter of verification from the institution for your studies. Uh, the more documents, the better. If you are unsure whether you should bring a document with you, my advice is just to bring it because there's maybe a case where the visa officer might ask to see something that you uh, had from the university about housing, for example. If you have such a letter, then bring that with you so that you can provide it when requested. So I mentioned SEVIS. SEVIS is the government database that monitors the F1 and M1 students in the US. So for our purposes, this is going to be for F1 visas. It's an acronym and it stands for the Student and Exchange Visitor Information Systems. So it's a web-based system maintaining all the information on all the non-immigrant students and exchange visitors that are in the USA. So international students applying to Avila will receive an F1 visa, so they will be part of this system. And because of this process, because it's using this system for part of the upkeep and maintenance of the system, that is the reason for the SEVIS fee, or also known as the I-901 fee. Again, the government likes to use these numbers and letters for all of their forms. So the fee for SEVIS is $350. It's a one-time fee for the duration that you maintain your SEVIS record in active student status, that you don't have to pay that again. So it's a one-time payment. Uh, there are there's more information you can find for that on the USCIS website, and it's paid online. So fmjfee.com is the website specifically set up for the payments of this. Uh, SEVP does accept third-party payments, meaning that somebody else can pay it on your behalf. as well. So it's using the same method of payment. The payment process asks you for all of your information, including everything that's on your Form I-20. So you'll have all the information from the Form I-20 that you will need to pay this fee. The application form for the visa itself, the DS-160, is needed to be completed to apply for the actual visa and schedule the visa interview appointment. So once it's completed and submitted, then you must pay the fee for that. The $185 fee covers the machine readable visa portion. So again, separate from the SEVIS fee. So of course, adding these fees up, it comes to $535 for SEVIS plus DS-160 fees. Once the form's completed, make sure you keep a hard copy of it. So print the form and keep it because it has a barcode page that you will need to take with you to the interview appointment when you attend in person. Once you have printed that and everything's submitted and the payments are made, you can then schedule your visa interview appointment. You're guided to that part of the process after you submit the DS-160. You should try scheduling your visa appointment as soon as possible. I can't emphasize that enough because, especially in certain regions of the world, the appointment waiting time can be quite significant. So the best thing to do is look immediately, as soon as you can, as soon as you're able to do so, to schedule your appointment, because the wait times can vary around the world, and especially for the different embassies within your region. So applying for that, just as to summarize, to apply for your F1 visa, first you must be accepted to a university that has been approved to issue F1 visas by SEVP. The university, upon your admission, will then work with you to collect your financial documents and a copy of your passport to then issue you the Form I-20. Once you receive that, you then pay the I-901 SEVIS fee. Once that is paid and you have printed your receipt and made a copy of that, then it is time to complete and submit the DS-160 fee, DS-160 application and pay that fee. And then you're ready to schedule your visa interview appointment, and then you can attend that. Some appointments require some type of biometric screening as well. If that is the case, you'll be notified once you're trying to schedule your appointment at the US Embassy or consulate in your region. All right, I'm going to pass it back to Saleh, who's going to give you some important information to keep in mind beyond these processes and the applications.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much because now I do believe it's a lot more clear for everyone in the audience. There's a lot of steps, but if you go step by step, you will be just fine and the journey doesn't seem as daunting then. But now, once you get there, how do we prepare for the F1 visa interview and what are they in the first place? So, first thing that I would like everyone to understand that there are no set questions to a visa interview. Every student is different, every situation is different, therefore, every interview is also different. Now, visa officers do not have a list of questions, they do not have a script of what they're going to ask. An interview is not a test, it's a conversation between you and a visa officer. Therefore, if you were thinking that I'm just going to go on Google and check what everyone's asking or gonna ask ChatGPT for the best answers possible, that's not going to work. Visa officers are looking for genuine students who are genuinely interested to study in the US in the chosen university for the chosen course and not generic answers that perhaps your friends used or somebody gave you a script really. So the purpose of the interview is to understand whether the student intends to settle in the US or travel back to their home country after studying. And can the student afford to stay in the US for the duration of their studies? And also a reminder that for the most up-to-date list of required documents, please check your local US consulate website. Now, Dr. Martin really well said that if you feel like you need to bring a document or you think about it, bringing a document, please do bring it. Make sure that your documents are also well presented. They're not mingled somewhere in the back of your backpack, but neat and tidy. And if asked for a document, you know where to find it instead of having a massive pile of documents and then very nervously going through hundreds of documents looking for through your passport. At the same time, remember, only give the documents you're asked for. So even if you bring hundreds of documents, do not just hand the pile, hand the documents you're asked for. Right. So we already spoke that visa officers do not have set of questions. Therefore, every interview is different. So how can we prepare for it? Now, really, whenever you're investing in your future or whenever you're investing in anything, you do your research. You wouldn't just wake up one morning thinking, I shall buy a car and go to the first dealership you can see outside and buy the first car you see. You would do your research about which car is best suitable for you and for your money. And it's similar with the universities. You wouldn't just invest your time and your money and your future into something without doing any research. And it's the same with the universities. So doing a research is really, really important before an F1 visa interview and really before applying to the university as well. It's your responsibility as an adult, it's your responsibility as a student to do this research. However, we can suggest areas of research you should be doing before making this decision. So number one is finance. So you should understand your full tuition fees and living expenses, as well as your sponsor details. Now, a couple of things to note here. I hear students tend to speak in their home currency. Avoid that. Speak in US dollars. It's going to be really hard if the visa officer asks you to convert currency on the spot because, well, you really should be speaking in US dollars. So save yourself some nerves. And when from today, whenever you're speaking with your friends, colleagues, or family, or your agents, or us, start speaking in US dollars. Get yourself used to it just in case. Now, I also understand that depending on which country you come from, speaking in about finances in very, very detailed way can feel uncomfortable. However, feeling uncomfortable while speaking with a US visa officer is not a great idea. So remember, you might be asked a bit more intricate details. Be open, be honest, and don't let it push you off guard. And my last advice about finances, especially if you are a younger student and your parents are paying for you, they're your sponsors. It's not enough to say that your parents are your sponsors or whoever's sponsoring you. It's important that still you know how much they're paying and your living expenses, as after all, this is your future. Motivation and interest. So why did you choose this program? I will run ahead of the Q&A section and straight away say that why did you choose this program? There's no right or wrong answer. There's no such thing as what does the visa officer want me to say? What the visa officer wants you to say is your actual motivation and interest and how to tie in with a study program. Presentation is also really important. So dress code, dress at least semi-formal or formal, and being on time. And again, because there are so many people here from all over the world, I'll be very specific of what being on time means. Being on time means be a lot earlier. Punctuality is really, really valued. And not only are you going to look good for coming early, you do not want to go through all these steps of booking a visa appointment just to lose it because you're 1 minute late. Sorry about that. At the same time, you don't know, you're going to be nervous. Perhaps there's going to be no parking spots, or your bus is going to be late, or the door will be pushed and you will keep on pulling, wasting precious time just because you're nervous and also rushed. You don't want to stand in front of a visa officer hyperventilating from running and rushed because you didn't look at the time. Being on time means being early, especially in this case. Don't lose your visa just because you were late. Social media is also really important, and we're going to have a bigger section on it later in the slides. And as already discussed, document preparation. Also think about living in the USA, so your travel arrangements, campus accommodation and dependence, your future plans, such as ties to your home country, and plans after your studies. When you speak about plans after your studies, remember, although each and one of you are interesting individuals, what visa officers are looking for is how will this course tie in with your future plans? Institution details, such as unique selling points of the institution, study modules, alumni, professors, really, you can do as much research as you want. Each of you are different, so your research and reasons for choosing the university and the course are also going to be different. Your personal details, work and study history, and what is unique about you. And sometimes students ask me, why do I say that you need to prepare and remember your work and study history if you were the one studying and working? Very simple. If you're nearing somewhere in your mid 20s, you're very closely nearing the age when you stop forgetting how old are you. And that's when you start forgetting also which year did you complete your university. What you don't want is when the visa officer asks you, when did you complete your bachelor's degree? You suddenly counting on your fingers, was it 5 years ago? Was it 2 or was it 3 years ago? So just remind yourself of the dates of completion. Trust me, I would love to say don't be nervous, and then you would all stop being nervous in your visa interviews, but that's highly unlikely. So the best thing we can do is prepare. Travel details are also really important. So previous international travels and international travels of your family members. So think, did you ever previously got visa acceptance for any other countries or perhaps for US, or did you have visa rejection for any of those countries? Right, so what are common interview mistakes? I mentioned a few, but let's go to the most common ones that would get your visa rejection. So number one being, again, not enough research. Applicants are expected to have comprehensive understanding of the university, the chosen study program, and the country they plan to study in. Lack of research can give the impression that the applicant is not genuinely interested or committed to their educational journey, leading to an interview fail. Also remember that when you're doing research, a good research is the one where you can also compare. Now, number two is providing scripted or generic answers. And I think recently that's really, really climbing into number one reason why students are getting rejected. So scripted students are those who have rehearsed their answers to common interview questions without truly understanding or internalizing the content. So why does scripted not work? Visa officers, they speak with thousands of students. And my team as well, we do hundreds of interviews a week, thousands a month. You get to the point where you heard it all, and that's okay. But you also get to the point when you're starting to realize I am hearing the exact same answer word to word, even intonation to intonation. I'm even starting to pick up when it's different things being said, but the paragraphs in the same order of USPs being listed. Visa officers are trained to find scripted answers, and scripted answers will get a visa rejection. I sometimes hear students say, I just said one sentence and I got rejected. In my mind, I always go, and that sentence was a script now, wasn't it? There's a reason why actors worldwide are paid so much. Why? It's simply because it's practically impossible. It requires so much skill and so much practice to take somebody else's words and sell it as if they're coming from your heart. It's unlikely you will be able to do that for a visa interview. So if somebody gave you a script, do yourself a favor, throw it in the trash and forget it. Speak in your own words. And if somebody asks you for a script, do not get it to them. Help them with the research, but not with a script. It's also the generic answers. And with the generic answers, I will also go by an example. What is it? Now, a generic answer is an answer where really you could insert any country, any university, and any course in a sentence, and the sentence would still work. The sentence meaning wouldn't change. For example, I wanted to study business administration since I was a child because it was my dream. I wanted to study cybersecurity because it was my dream. If you can fit any course into a sentence, that sentence is generic. A generic sentence is okay, but if your full answer is generic, That's not going to work. That shows a low level of research, and that shows a script. At the same time, think about other life experiences as well. You wouldn't go to a job interview unprepared to the point where you can only speak about generics about a company. You, if you're traveling the world and you're booking a hotel and somebody asks you, why did you book this hotel? Your answer likely wouldn't be because it has a bed. Because, well, show me a hotel that doesn't. Why are you booking it in the first place? Same with the university. If somebody asks you, why did you choose this university? And you answer because it has a library, show me a university in the US that does not have a library. So think about it. If your answer can be fit to any university, that's generic. Common knowledge can take us far in life. Critical thinking can take us far in life without research. Visa interview is not that life situation. Well, it will carry you through. Right, so I also have an example here. So which answers are considered generic? Avila University has a library, classrooms, and good teachers. I chose to study at Avila University because the ranking stood out. I chose to study at Avila University because they offered a program that was exactly what I was looking for and had A, B, and even C. Well, none of these answers are wrong. It's clearly that the third one shows the most research done. Well, again, number one, library, classroom, good teachers. Go to any website, I'm pretty sure everyone says that. Because ranking stood out. Again, don't be fooled if you are just saying that and you didn't really check rankings and you're then asked which ranking and where did it rank, you're going to be in trouble. So do your research and do not try generic phrases where later you will not be able to keep up with the conversation. Because again, an interview is not a test, it's a conversation. Poor communication is also a big factor why visa could be rejected. So that's an inability to effectively communicate and convince the interviewer about the applicant's genuine intention, academic goals, and plans after completing the study program. And that also can impact the outcome of the interview. So you've done your research, you're not scripted, and you still get rejected, and it's likely because of poor communication. You have wonderful English test scores, and somehow you're still rejected for poor communication. What happened? People get nervous, and that's a normal human reaction to a situation that you're entering for the first time. Being nervous is okay, but make sure that the nervous is channeled into something good. So not a script, but your research. So how can we help the communication skills? Number one, practice. Many of us don't speak English as our first language, me including. And when you don't live in an English speaking country, you get rusty with your English skills, no matter how good you are. So before the interview, start practicing. Speak English with your friends, speak English to your mirror, speak English to yourself. At the same time, remember only answer questions you're asked for. Same with the documents, same with the questions. You answer what you asked, you give what you're asked, right? What do I mean by that? We see a lot of students running ahead, especially with their scripts, although it happens without scripts as well, ahead to other questions. So for example, they asked why Avila University, and they give a perfect 4 to 5 sentences answer why Avila University. However, then they start answering why US and why not their home country and why not this course and why this course and why do they like this module the most. That's not what you were asked. Nobody wants, like in Hollywood movies, the story of how you got here. The only thing they want to know is the answer to the question asked. Now, I mentioned that the answer should be 4 to 5 sentences. I know it sounds daunting. How do I count? Really practice in front of a mirror and listen to yourself. And very, very quickly, you will start realizing which answers sound longer, which ones are shorter. Also, avoid just saying yes, sir, no, sir, or yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, because you might not be asked follow-up questions. So do stick with a few sentences at least. but not your life story or everything you ever practice either. Information inaccuracy, and this one's also really important. There's different types of visa rejections, and some visa rejections are harder to come back from than others. Now, for example, if you're lying to the visa officer about your previous visa rejections or perhaps overstaying your visa before or anything at all, first of all, remember that they see all this information on the screens, so they will know you're lying. Lying will lead you to a visa rejection that will be either impossible or very, very hard to come back from. So providing false, misleading, or inaccurate information, whether it be related to previous visa history, family ties in the US, etc. So what do you do if you do have a visa rejection? Number one, don't panic. Everything's still possible. Number two, when you're handed the visa rejection slip, don't throw it out. There's just too many cases when I saw students getting angry and throwing it out. Don't throw it out. You will want to read it to understand why you were rejected. Because next time you're applying, you want to think about, when was I rejected? For which country? What type of visa? And how did my circumstances changed since then? And remember, we saw students being rejected once, twice, three times, and even more, and still get a visa acceptance later. So just don't panic, do your research, don't be scripted, and everything's possible. Right, and then hopefully if you do get your visa, I wanted to very quickly cover the tips and tricks for that would help you maintain your visa status. So there's a lot of things that you would also get to know the moment you would get a visa and you would arrive at Avila of how to maintain your visa, but just to very quickly cover the basics. So F1 visa holders must arrive no more than 30 days before the program start date. That's very important and also mentioned in the beginning of the presentation. Arriving earlier than this may result in denial of entry, or so plan your travel accordingly. There's also work restrictions. Dr. Martin is going to speak later about what is permitted with work, but what's not permitted is working off campus. And violating this rule can lead to immediate termination of your visa status. On-campus work is allowed, but limited 20 hours per week. Again, we will discuss it slightly later. Dependents are not permitted to work on or off campus under any circumstances. Campus presence. International students must be physically present in the US for classes, even if some classes are online. And academic progress is also really important. So students must maintain good academic standing, and failure to meet academic requirements or dismissal from the university results in termination of your visa status. Now let's talk about another topic that's really important. That's US visa officers and social media checks. So US visa application forms now ask for social media handles used in the last 5 years. And officers can review public social media profiles to verify the identity, intent, and consistency. Also remember, they can review the public social media profiles. It doesn't mean they always will, but it's important to understand that they might be reviewing. Content that contradicts the stated purpose of travel, shows ties to US, or includes concerning behavior might raise red flags. And students are advised to maintain professional, honest, and consistent profiles. It might sound daunting, but really you wouldn't, as a self-respecting adult, you wouldn't apply to a job with social media being public and not representative. And also, really, internet is forever, and we always knew that. That's not news. That's not a change of today. We always need to be careful of our presence online. So how can you prepare for the social media checks for US visa interview? So number one, prepare a list of all social media usernames and handles you have used in the past 5 years. Update your privacy settings on those accounts to public. And if you are on our webinar today, even if your visa interview is in a month, even if in 2, make it public today. it takes time for it to actually become officially public since you press the button, go public. Avoid deleting content or suddenly changing settings just before applying. Doing so may raise suspicion. So you can imagine if a police officer knocks on your door and you suddenly start hiding random documents that are actually fully legal, it's still suspicious, isn't it? So deleting something that's not doing you harm might cause suspicion. Review posts carefully and remove or archive anything that could be interpreted as hostile or extremist. Or, well, really, don't post it in the first place, would be my advice. Um, and content should reflect intent. As international student social media presence should consistently align with their stated reasons for entering the US. Their online activity should reflect genuine academic interest, and posts suggesting long-term plans to work, immigrate permanently, or engage in activities not permitted under your visa conditions, like, let's say, full-time employment, can raise red flags during the vetting process. And something to also remember, jokes or casual comments can be misinterpreted. You might be an influencer back in your home country where the whole country knows you and the whole country knows that your content is sarcastic or funny. Now, visa officer will not know that. One thing you never want to do is joke with any official uh, uh, person from a visa embassy. That goes from both the interview, social media, and so on. Jokes are wonderful. Humor is a sign of intelligence, but not in this case. Avoid controversial and misleading posts as mentioned, and do try to build a positive digital footprint. But if your visa interview is in 2 weeks and you're suddenly starting those 2 weeks posting about how wonderful and great and how much charity you do, that's also looks both silly and it causes suspicion. And highlight academic achievements, community involvement, and extracurricular interests that support your student profile. And with that, as already mentioned a few times throughout this presentation, a very, very interesting topic for all CPT and OPT, and I will let Dr. Martin lead us through it.
Yes, thank you so much. All that information is so helpful for those in an interview. I myself, having done a couple, it's everything is true and accurate. You want to answer the questions you are asked and have all of the information ready to say, but not scripted, of course. So CPT and OPT are forms of employment that are associated with the F1 visa. And the reason why I think it's important to talk about it in this context for compliance is that it can often be something that is misleading when it comes to that conversation with the visa officer. So many students want to pursue CPT and OPT employment during or after the completion of their F1 visa. However, I have worked with students who have said to the visa officer how they are excited about the work related to these things when they're coming to study for the visa, and it's resulted in a denial of said visa because we have to remember the primary purpose of the F1 visa is to study. CPT and OPT are not necessarily required for your degree program, so they're not something that's an absolute definite that every student must complete. In fact, I myself did OPT, but I never did CPT. And so if I'm coming to the interview to talk about working as part of my F1 status, that gives the impression to the US visa officer that your intention is primarily to work and not study, and therefore it is not in alignment with the purpose of the F1 visa, which is to be a full-time student. So let's talk about the details of CPT and OPT so you can more fully understand what they are and how they're used in the context of an F1 visa and an F1 visa program so that you can understand it better and be able to talk about it if asked, but also understanding the limitations that come with it. So CPT is curricular practical training. It is a type of temporary work authorization that happens during the study of your degree program. So before you graduate, and it's something that's related to your degree program. It's generally speaking used for the purpose of an internship or cooperative education or other type of practical training. It has to be in a field that's related to your major area of study. So, for example, if your concentration area is computer science, you would have to be working in something related to the computer science field in that way. You cannot, for example, be doing computer science and then work in a fast food restaurant for your CPT. That's not in alignment with your degree. And in fact, the approval process for CPT has to go through your academic advisor at Avila. So they have to review the job description that you're applying for and determine whether that's in alignment with your degree program, because the ultimate goal of this is to get you valuable experience related to your degree as part of your degree program. CPT can be paid or unpaid. There are many internship opportunities in the United States at many different companies. Some of them are unpaid and some of them are paid. So either is an option for this. In order to be eligible for this type of employment, though, you need to have completed at least one academic year of study. Unless you're in a graduate program that requires immediate training, currently none of our programs require that immediate training. It's typically an option that we provide as a capstone at the end of the graduate program to utilize for that purpose. So it is something that is not necessarily required of a student to complete. You can complete any and all of our degree programs without doing CPT at all. You can perhaps do a research project as your capstone instead of an internship, and you would be just fine. So the employment based on this is optional and is not guaranteed. It is not something that is the primary purpose of the F1 visa. It is a small portion of your degree program and study and professional development. OPT, on the other hand, the O stands for optional practical training. And keep that word in mind, optional, and that OPT is something that you don't necessarily have to do, although many of our students do pursue this and they do want to do this. So it's a type of work authorization to authorize you for employment after you finish your degree. There is a type of pre-completion OPT, but Avila University does not offer that. So the only one that we offer is post-completion OPT. And what it does is it basically is something you apply for, and there is another application, another form, another fee to pay to get this eligibility. You'll have more information through your time with us here at Avila to prepare you for this process, but it grants you the eligibility to work for up to 1 year in the field related to your study after you graduate. So again, it has to be related to your degree program of study. So if you are in business administration, your employment during OPT must be related to business administration. If your degree is classified as a STEM degree, there is also the option of applying for an additional 2 years on top of that, so a total of 36 months of OPT. So it becomes a very attractive option for students who are looking for not only a qualification from Avila, but also the opportunities to work and gain valuable work and professional experience working for companies in the US through CPT and OPT. However, the important thing that I want to emphasize is not to let that cloud your conversation that you're having with the visa officer. If you're only really wanted to talk about, or if you're mostly talking about CPT and OPT, that's going to raise some red flags with the officer because they're going to assume that you're more interested in working than you are in studying. That means you're applying for the wrong visa in their mind because F1 visas are for full-time students. There are opportunities to work part-time on campus as well, up to 20 hours a week while you're a F1 student. That doesn't require any particular type of authorization of either of these types. That type of employment is not a guarantee. But again, it's not the type of thing that you necessarily want to lead with when you're talking to the visa officer. You may talk about in some contexts the opportunities that you might have post-graduation and the connections that, Avila faculty have with certain industries and fields and companies in particular that you might have done your research on. You might talk about that and how that might be an exciting prospect for you to have internship opportunities. But it should not be something that you lead with to say, this is what I want to do. I want to come to do CPT, OPT, because that tells the visa officer that you're really only interested in work rather than study. So this table summarizes everything, what the type of employment is. So they are both related to the degree program that you're studying. CPT happens to be part of the program itself, and you can be awarded academic credits for those internship opportunities. OPT is something that you would do with Avila after you finish your program. In order to be eligible for CPT as part of that process, you must have the job offer first and then ask for the authorization process to begin. The reason for that is that they need to see the job description and be able to match that with the degree outcomes and make sure that it's related to your degree program. For OPT, you don't need a job offer to apply for that. It's just something that you apply for the eligibility to have that work authorization, and then you start looking for jobs as soon as your process is approved. The authorization time for each therefore differs as well. We authorize CPT internally. USCIS has to review and authorize your OPT applications. You can do paid or unpaid work with both of these options. CPT is typically part-time during school. In some very specific cases, there may be a full-time internship opportunity that you could do for a short period of time, but if you do that for too long, you would then be ineligible for OPT. So it's not something that we recommend for students. OPT employment must be full-time. You must maintain it over 20 hours of employment in order to maintain that eligibility. And just keeping that in mind as you go forward will help you with planning your conversation with your visa officer for knowing what these opportunities are, what they really mean, but knowing that they are ultimately all part of the experience related to your degree program. That's what you want to be emphasizing. I'm talking about my degree program. But I think it's time for to have a conversation about some myth busting related to the visa interview process and also the compliance requirements for F1. So what do you think, Sally?
Absolutely. And let's go to the first one. Something that we keep on hearing students say or saying similarly, I can work full time on my F1 visa whenever I want, or sometimes I even hear, but I have friend in the US who is currently working for Uber, so I can as well. What do you think about that?
It is just quite flatly false. There may be, like I said, there are very small occasions for the students here at Avila. I think there has only ever been like one or two that have had a small period of full-time employment through CPT. But again, it's very specific to certain circumstances and certain requirements of such internships, but it is not something that you're going to be able to do or rely on doing while you're an F1 student. Working full time is just not really an option. As I mentioned, the eligibility to work on campus on a part-time basis, which is capped at 20 hours per week, is something that you will have approval for as just part of being an F1 student, as long as it's on campus. And that's the other thing. Um, this part-time employment is specific to the institution that sponsors your visa, Avila University. So it has to be working on Avila's campus. You cannot just do part-time work in Walmart or a fast food chain. So there are very strict requirements when it comes to that, and even stricter so when it comes to CPT and OPT approval. I I I worry for those students that we hear about who are just driving for Uber and finding those gig economy type employment. It's not something that we can necessarily control. We cannot force you to do or not do anything, but it is not in your interest to pursue that type of employment because if USCIS finds out, that is reason for terminating your visa status.
And that's definitely something we want to avoid and you want to avoid as well. Now, another thing I can hear, I keep hearing is I can skip classes as long as I pass.
Well, I mean, Saule, did you ever skip your classes and still be able to pass?
Well, technically, when I first started studying, I did try skip classes for the first few times and very quickly realized that that's not an option when you're a university student, really.
Yes, I agree. The instructor in me is a little bit nervous about that, but it becomes less about whether or not you can pass the class with completing the assignments and more about the requirements from the government about attendance in person. Um, I'm sure that you've probably heard a lot about students who are talking about studying online and in seat. Everything was different during COVID, but it has since gone back to the way it was before, where there is a requirement as part of being an F1 student that's given by USCIS. It's not an Avila requirement, it's a US government one that F1 students have to be in seat for a certain amount of time each semester. That means uh, there are maybe some classes that can be done online, but the majority, or at least a certain amount of required hours, are meant to be in class. Um, for Avila's purposes, as an institution, we care about you passing the class, but the government cares about where you are and where you can be accounted for certain hours per the requirements. So even if you think you can pass the class and skip the class, which the instructor in me doesn't think you'd really be able to do, this is higher education. It's not a walk in the park. Um, but also just knowing that you might be out of compliance with your F1 status if you are missing those hours of in-person classes. Um, I mean, I think that it's an important consideration to keep in mind that it's not necessarily just about passing the classes. It's about being in the NC classes for the allotted time.
Right. And honestly, now years after graduating, I very rarely, if I ever, hear someone saying like, "Oh, I wish I skipped more classes at university." Something I keep on hearing, however, is I wish I took more out of my studies than I did when I was young and foolish and thought that I could just not attend classes. It's such a brilliant opportunity. You have this dedicated time in your life just to study. And that's a
Mhm.
beautiful time in your life. Don't waste it by just skipping classes.
Yeah, I promise
Or
that our classes are fun. You'll want to be there.
I wish I could be there, honestly. All right, saying I want to stay in US after graduation is a good thing.
That can often sound like a good thing to people. And I'll tell you about my specific journey. I came to the US, let's see, well, first I was a J1 exchange student, and then I went back home. Then I came as an F1 student full time and did two graduate degrees, did OPT. I then since got an H-1B visa, and now I have a green card and I'm a permanent resident. I say this to say that, sometimes that does happen, but it's all about the intent of what you want to happen. I know so many students I speak to, and Saule, maybe you hear it as well, that say like that they ideally want to stay. They want to come to the US for the higher education opportunities, but they would like to remain. Uh, do you hear that often in your experience?
I do hear that quite a lot. Sometimes it comes from the misunderstanding what an F1 visa actually is. But I think that's the reality. Sometimes when we're thinking, what does the visa officer want me to say or what they want to hear, is when we deter from what's actually true and what's actually true to yourself. And the F1 visa is a non-immigrant visa, so staying permanently can lead to visa denial. And previously in these slides, we also talked to ties to the home country. So proving that you're actually going to stay home, go home after studying, that's what's actually important.
Yes. And that is the most important distinction. Non-immigrant in this context means uh, you are not remaining in the United States permanently. You're there on a temporary basis for the duration that is approved. And the different visa types that they offer that are all non-immigrant all have different durations. And in this context, it's the duration of your program of study. And once your program of study is done, typically, your options are, well, do I apply for OPT or do I have this just stay for a little bit during my grace period and then return home? Of course, my path was different, but I can say with honesty that it wasn't necessarily my intention to stay in the US when I first came as an F1 student. Um, it was something that happened to be something I worked towards as I was here, and I found that opportunity, and I'm grateful for it. But um, just as a piece of advice, the focus for your application at this stage and at this stage of your life should really be about focusing on your studies and developing your skills through your degree program. Uh, as a piece of personal advice, your goals and your career path can always change. So my focus for you in this stage of your life, but also for the visa process, is to focus on the degree that you're applying for and really completing that because you never know what might open up to you in terms of opportunities after that. It remains to be seen, and it will typically be at least a few years before you're even thinking about the next steps. So just keep that in mind. If you're thinking too far ahead and thinking that I absolutely want to remain in the United States, that ultimately is not the purpose of the F1 visa. So just keep that in mind when you're going through this process.
Absolutely. Right. A very common one. Agents or friends can coach me for my interviews word to word. Or in other words, I have a friend that lives next doors, went to the same school as me, and now applying to the same university. She got a visa acceptance, so all I need to do is repeat her answers word to word. So somebody can coach me, or I can get a script. Dr. Martin, what do you think about that?
Well, I think that you addressed this very well when you were talking about this earlier in this webinar. Um, Everybody is different. And so if you're copying somebody else's script, for example, uh, it's not going to match who you are or what you're aspiring to. And like you said, the visa officers are well trained to spot scripted answers. I, um, in an admissions context, I can spot template emails a mile away. They can spot scripted responses a mile away. It is also uh, something to add while it's not the visa officer's responsibility to determine what admissions criteria are for an institution, we're all required to ask for some type of English proficiency for admission of international students, and especially if they're coming from non-English speaking countries. Uh, if you are providing a scripted answer, that visa officer might make the determination that you don't have the sufficient English skills to be a successful F1 student. While that's not necessarily in their purview, there's nothing to stop them denying you for such a reason. And you may never learn that specifically, but that is just something to keep in mind as well with the scripted answers. They can make it sound like not only is this ingenuine, but that you are not fully understanding what it is that you're saying, and that's a cause for concern for the officer.
Wonderful. I agree fully. And if you do one thing, I always say it's better to try with your own words than fail with somebody else's. At least then you will know where did you go wrong. But if you're speaking somebody else's words and you get a visa rejection, you don't even know where you got wrong really. And
Hmm.
the wrong is usually because you're scripted. And with that, I think we already gonna go. Oh, no, sorry, there's one more. Apologies. There's another myth we wanted to speak about today, which is visa officers don't look at documents like at all. So they're not important. The only thing that's important is the visa interview. As long as the student has an I-20, that's it, isn't it then?
I think that one of the things that I've heard of most commonly is that students will assume that the documents needed for the I-20, such as the financial statements, aren't needed again because, well, of course, they were sufficient for the I-20. Surely the I-20 in itself is enough. The reality is that you should have those with you. They may be requested. In fact, I think that they commonly are requested. People want to double check to make sure. And the reason for these financial statements is to make sure that the government is issuing visas and institutions are supporting admission of students who are not going to come to the United States and be financially destitute or struggle or, you know, not be able to support themselves because we don't want that experience for students. And so we're doing our best to make sure that the students that are being approved for visas and approved for admission are able to support their studies financially so that they're not ending up in any difficult or horrible positions. So they may ask to see anything. So, like I said, if you are not sure if a document should come with you to your interview, bring it anyway. But as Saule was saying, make sure that your documents are organized in a way that you can find things quickly. I recommend using tabs. Uh, you can also make sure your documents are all in a physical hard copy, not on your phone. Uh, I've been to the US Embassy in London a couple of times. In fact, well, the old embassy in London, they didn't allow any electronics in at the time, so no phones, not even your car remote locker was allowed inside. And I remember having to go to another establishment around the corner from the embassy where they had lockers that people could store things in. The new London embassy, I believe, when I was there, they do allow electronics, but there are screening processes for those. So you'll need to check the embassy or consulate where you are attending whether or not they allow electronic devices in the first place. So my advice, just have everything in hard copy, clean copies, not scrumpled up in the back of your backpack. Um, I don't know. Saule, uh, what's the worst condition of a document you have seen that you've been able to accept?
Honestly, even when students submit applications, we see everything from transcripts that were clearly in a bath of a coffee to passports where student is covering their their passport number with a thumb by accident. So if it doesn't work for your application, it will not work for visa as well. I know that
Mhm.
many will be nervous, and I know it's easy to, by accident, scrunch your documents in your backpack, but this is not the place where you risk it. And really, learning how to keep your documents clean, tidy, and organized early in life, the later you will thank you so much because that's not only a visa skill, that's a life skill you want to carry,
Mhm.
really.
And it also ties in with what you were saying before about professionalism and your presentation when you arrive, not only in the way you dress and the way you act, but the way you present your documents and information. It all makes a difference. If you are not looking like you are serious about this process, that translates to the officers. So just make sure that everything you're doing is as prepared as it can be.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. All right, and now we can go to the Q&A section. I already see quite interesting questions coming for us. And one of the first questions, and I see Dr. Martin, you already selected as something you want to answer. Would you like to go ahead?
Yes, this question was about visa denial and what the next steps would be. This person received a slip with a denial code of 221G. If I remember correctly, 221G is a a code that generally means that there wasn't enough information provided by the applicant. So this might be a situation where insufficient documents or the answers to the questions asked were not thorough enough. But typically, once you receive a visa denial and you're worried and you're thinking of what your next steps are, uh, my recommendation is to, first of all, speak with your agent about any resources or help they might have with mock interviews. Uh, that type of thing can help you prepare. There are also other third-party companies that can help with visa interview preparations, but also just checking with the uh, admissions department to make sure that, everything that you have and everything that you brought with you is what's available and what should be being brought. I can also verify things like that for you if you reach out to me directly. But being denied is not, like as Saule was saying, is not the end of the journey necessarily. You can apply again. It mostly depends on what the specific denial reason was. Like if you were dishonest in your interview, you're unlikely to get the visa if you apply again. But for something where, in this case, if you didn't have all the information that the visa officer needed at that time, you can apply again and revise your documents, make sure you have all the information ready to talk about. And it is something that you can do again. I have seen some students have success with a second or third visa interview, which is not really the process that everybody wants to go down. But for the cases where, maybe your first time out at the interview was maybe just you weren't as fully prepared as you could be, there are ways to remedy that for a second attempt. So the next step is to apply again. If the I-20 that you were issued originally is still valid for the term coming up that you wish to apply for and can receive an appointment in time, you can still use that. If not, then you can ask for our admissions team to defer your application and issue an updated I-20 with a new start date to use for the second application.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for answering this question. I see also in the beginning of this question, there's a recall of what the officer asked. And one of the questions was MBA is online. Why are you going? So that's just a reminder for everyone. If you're going to a visa interview, sometimes questions might be provoking. That's to push you off the script if you are on the script, but also to see how you're thinking on the spot. So remember that even if it's a question you didn't uh, prepare for, breathe, don't be nervous. Sometimes they are used to provoke. Don't be the one that gets scared. And remember, if you didn't hear the question right or you didn't fully understand it, it's absolutely okay to ask the officer to rephrase it or repeat it. That's not a crime, really. And if in a normal conversation you didn't hear what your friend is saying, you would ask them to repeat. That's how the conversation goes. And again, it's not a test, it's a conversation. If you didn't hear the question, ask ask to repeat.
Hmm.
Right.
And just to clarify, sorry, um, if you've received an I-20 for our MBA program, it's not an online program. We do offer the MBA online for domestic students, but of course, per F1 regulations, as I mentioned, you have to be in seat for a certain amount of time in your classes. So it may be you may have an option to take some classes online as part of the MBA, but you will have an in-seat component. So that's something to just talk about with the officer. If they see it says on our website, for example, online program, it is an option for some students, but you're specifically coming to something that has NC classes. Just remember to reiterate that.
Very, very helpful. Thank you so much. Now we have another question, which is what kind of social media information are the visa applicants expected to disclose? So just a reminder that at the current time, and this might change, but at the current time, all you might ask to disclose is your account, so the name of your accounts, and to make them public. However, do keep your eyes peeled. The information does tend to change. Dr. Martin, anything to add here?
Uh, the only thing that I would say, because this is so new and it's, in my humble opinion, not very clearly defined in the government directives. if you're not sure if something constitutes as social media, assume that it does. So, for example, forums like Reddit, if you have an account on there, you should be sharing that handle. It may not be considered classic social media, but you should be prepared to offer your username on certain forums because that's the also where people might share information that the US government is really looking for in this case.
Wonderful, thank you. There's also a question, have you ever seen a case where a student visa was affected due to their online behavior? Now, because there's not really a code for it for visa refusal, we wouldn't see if that's the main or primary reason why the student was rejected. Usually the rejections are quite complex. However, we do already are seeing students being asked for their social media handle, so we do know they're checking. I don't believe they're checking each and every student, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't be prepared. That just means that if you're not asked, don't worry, don't panic. That's also okay. But they're definitely checking now. Have any of them been rejected due to social media? I think at the moment it's too hard to say. It's also quite new. And I don't know, unless Dr. Martin, did you see anyone being rejected solely for social media?
Not yet. Again, it's so new. Really, this directive came out, I think, 2 or 3 weeks ago. So it's not something that we've seen yet. It's unclear at this time how it will all play out. Um, but we are keeping track of that kind of feedback that we're getting from students and applicants. So hopefully we'll have more data to share at a later time.
Thank you. All right, let's go to the next question. What is the letter of verification acceptance?
That is typically the letter of admission that you would receive once you have submitted your application and required application materials, and you've been admitted to the university. So you would have received that via email. That's something that you should print and take with you. Um, Letter of verification is just something very similar. Any and all correspondence that you've received uh, from Avila University that's in an official correspondence, print that and take it with you. But typically, it's something to verify that you are going to be enrolled in a program that you're admitted to.
Cool. All right, let's look for more questions. Some of them are repeating, so forgive my silence. I'm just going through the questions. I had also denial a few days ago, but officer did only 1 minute interview and didn't ask a lot. I want to take an interview again, but I might be a little late for classes if I get a visa. I want to have next interview on 22nd of August. So, Dr. Martin, is there a way students can transfer to the next intake?
Yes, in this case, so if your interview is going to be the 22nd of August, classes start the 25th. It's just not feasible because again, if remember, if you are approved for your visa, they keep your passport to put in the visa stamp and send it back to you or send it to a location where you pick it up from. So you're not going to be able to travel immediately after visa approval anyway. At least this was my experience when I applied for my visas, but this was a few years ago now, of course. So if that is the earliest that you're going to receive your visa interview appointment, then you should really be working to defer your admission to a later term and work on having your visa appointment on that date be for your admission to a later start date. So work with your agent to then have your application and admission deferred to a later term, and then we'll issue you the updated I-20, which you would use for that visa appointment.
Right, I think that's very clear. Um, there's again very similar questions about the timelines if the visa appointment is late. There's also a few questions. What if there's currently no visa appointments available in some countries? Any advice for students in these situations?
That is tough. There are some regions of the world, countries, and some specific embassies and consulates that are not currently accepting new appointments. It is just something that's outside of our control as an institution. Um, every embassy is different. Every region is operating differently. Uh, it's just something that you would have to continually check for updates on the specific embassy or consulate website. Um, that is the only guidance I can really offer at this time. Uh, I don't know, Saleh, do you have any advice or suggestions on that?
Honestly, my advice here would be very human and very simple. Keep hope, keep checking. And one of the things we hear students say is check during the night, and that's when sometimes you will be able to catch it. All right. Are there any compulsory medical screenings to be conducted and show the results during the visa appointment?
Uh, I don't believe that there are for the appointment, but we do require TB screenings for new students, uh, which is for tuberculosis, but I don't believe that it's required for the visa. I don't know. Sally, do you have any correction for that?
I also believe it's not required for the visa, but as Dr. Martin mentioned before, if you do have the document, there's nothing wrong with bringing it to your appointment. Just don't present it unless asked. But if you do, and you should have it, just bring it with you just in case. But I also didn't hear of any other medical questions being asked, really a medical test being done. All right. So again, interviews after the start date, that would mean that you will no longer be able to go to the current intake. Dr. Martin, any other questions that you're seeing that you would like to answer today?
I'm seeing a lot of questions that are very specific to individual cases. So, for example, about what course is listed on a specific I-20, and asking about very individual specific questions. Um, for those, my recommendation is to speak with the agent or our admissions team directly about those specific questions. I'd rather keep it to something that's a bit more generally helpful for everybody in attendance during this session, which I think that we might have covered for most everybody that submitted a question. But if you have specific questions about, what's listed on your specific I-20, speak with your agent. And then they can work with our admissions team if there's any need for any corrections or any clarification that they can provide.
Absolutely. And with this, I think we have answered all the questions that we could here. Now, again, just to reiterate, just again, if your questions are specific and might not have been answered, feel free to email us and we will be able to help you individually. But with that, thank you everyone for joining so much today. I can see that so many of you were engaging throughout this session, both through the chat and the Q&A sections. So thank you for being active in this webinar and thank you for participating. We really do appreciate it. And before we close this webinar, the very last question from me to Dr. Martin. Any last advice for students that are waiting for the visa interviews or just starting the visa journey?
Yeah, make sure that you've done all the advanced preparation that you can, but not in a way that it comes across as um, disingenuous. So make sure that you are being truthful and honest and being yourself with all of the information that you might need to answer questions and provide documents. And that will carry you far. That's really what we're looking for students who go through this process. Um, the other part that you already mentioned, Sally, for those who are in positions where they're not able to get appointments at this time, or if they're having difficulty scheduling, just to remain hopeful and just to know that if you have been denied once, it doesn't mean that this is the end of your journey. There are still ways to keep going and proceed.
Wonderful. Thank you so much and great last advice. Thank you, Dr. Martin, for participating in this webinar today. It was really, really helpful and we're all very grateful. Also, thank you our marketing team who has been working here in the background and also mediating this webinar. Thank you so much. And thank you each and everyone for joining. And we wish you best of luck in your student journey. Take care, everyone.
Yes, thank you all.